Look, we've seen the news. AI is reshaping industries, it's eating jobs, and it's creating a lot of uncertainty for us about what the future is going to look like. Now, I'm not here to preach to you about the ways in which the world is changing. I'm just here to tell you what to do about it. And so in this video, I'm going to share 14 mostly rapid-fire rules for how to reinvent yourself in the age of AI. By the way, this is the kind of work that I do for leaders, teams, and organizations across the world when I step onto stage to speak with them. Rule number 1 is called the precipice principle. In another lifetime, I was a physiotherapist and I worked mostly with patients who were post-hip replacement surgery. Now, the nature of a hip replacement is that if you've had one done, there's a very good chance that you will need another. And that is because osteoarthritis, the disease that often leads to a hip replacement, affects both joints at the same time. So typically what you might see is that someone would come in because they've just had a fall and they need to get that hip replaced, and we'll replace it and then say, in the next few months when you've healed up and you feel good and strong, come back, let's replace the other hip preventatively, ahead of time, before you need to replace it. And inevitably, what would happen is no one comes back. They don't come back because they don't feel the pain yet. And even though they can see the cliff in the distance, they don't change direction. And so what happens is that over time, they become more frail, they grow old, the hip weakens, and eventually one day, they fall over the cliff. Catastrophe, they break the other hip. And then they have to come back and get it replaced, but now they are older, they are weaker, and so rehab takes much longer, the risks are much higher, and this could have all been avoided. But this is human nature, is that very often we won't change until we fall over the cliff. And so the precipice principle just says, change before you need to change. Change before you are forced to change. Universally speaking, it is better to take action sooner rather than later. And so just get started. Rule number 2, the most important character traits right now is agency. When you are low in agency, you are quite passive and you feel like you are being controlled by the world around you. You feel like a victim to the world around you. Whereas when you are high in agency, you believe that you can exert a certain level of control back onto the world, that you are an active participant in creating your reality and ultimately your destiny. And so why is this important? Because it instills a bias for taking action. And this means that you are more likely to experiment with new AI tools to see how you can improve yourself and your business. And this leads to rule number 3, take smaller actions but more consistently. What we want is revolution and reinvention, but how we get there is through evolution. Reinvention is simply the accumulation of many small actions and decisions taken over time and sustained in a new direction. Rule number 4, if you aren't sure about what reinvention might look like for you, just start. You don't need perfect clarity. What you need is courage to take that first step. And a very interesting experiment to run here is that if you need a bit of a coach or a thinking partner, why not turn to artificial intelligence for that? What I find quite interesting is that AI is prompting us to reinvent ourselves, but we can also prompt AI to help us with that reinvention process. So use artificial intelligence as a thinking partner for how can you integrate AI more into your workflow and into your business. Rule number 5, Eduardo Brecheno in a great TEDx talk says that we are always operating in one of 2 zones, the learning zone or the performance zone. So the performance zone is where we get stuff done, the learning zone is where we learn. Now in sports, we spend 99% of our time in the learning zone, running drills, getting to know each other, and we do this in service of the 1% of the time that we will be on the field in the performance zone. Whereas in business, this ratio is completely skewed. In business, we spend 99.5% of our time in the performance zone, and if we are lucky, 0.5% in the learning zone. Now, of course, these domains are very different and it wouldn't make sense for them to have the same ratios. But in my opinion, most teams could benefit greatly from spending more time in the learning zone. And so this means actually having scheduled time to learn together so we can grow together as a team. But the same applies to you as an individual. You can't just spend all of your time being reactive and doing the things in front of you. You also need to learn new skills and new tools for where the world is moving towards. Rule number 6, No one expects you to be an AI expert. Just start using the tools to improve your own productivity. Rule number 7, don't buy into the fear-mongering. Fear-mongering gets clicks, but when we stare at the things that scare us, we are more likely to be paralyzed than what we are to be galvanized by it. And for many of us, we also feel like we are in survival mode, and when we then see change positioned as a threat to us, then of course we are going to retreat instead of engage with it. Instead, rule number 8, do buy into the hope that you can now create more limitlessly than ever before. If you've always felt creative but constrained because you didn't have the technical skills to exercise that creativity, you've been set free. Now you can write, you can design, you can create videos, all through text, all through unleashing what is just sitting in your mind. And what I have found is that reinvention is easier than ever before because we have access to so many resources through books and through YouTube videos to help us reinvent ourselves. Reinvention isn't something that is frowned upon, it is encouraged in 2025. Rule number 9, use more tools than just ChatGPT. I know that it's the obvious one, I know it's the most convenient one, and it's most likely the one where you'll get the most upside when you just get going into the world of AI. But there is so much more on offer. And the more you experiment with tools to help you design and write and create videos, the more you start unlocking the potential of what you could create, of how you could use these tools to either augment what you already have or to reinvent it in completely different ways. Rule number 10, give yourself permission to be a newbie again. This is a pretty big deal. Initially, you will feel a bit out of your depth. Like, it's easy to get going, but once you enter into the world of AI, you'll be exposed to an entirely new world. And you'll come across terms like vibe coding and LLMs and hallucination and chain of thought prompting. And all of this might seem quite daunting to you. But I promise you that the more time you spend with it, the more this will become just another language that you are able to utilize. It seems foreign at first, and then it becomes easy. Rule number 11. Understand the difference between technical skills and adaptive skills because you need both. Technical skills are learning how to use these new tools, but the adaptive skills is having the emotional intelligence to overcome the anxiety and the fear that comes with change. It is the ability to recalibrate and reinvent your identity, and you will need to spend time on both. Depending on the amount of change that you are experiencing, it might just be that you have to slightly move in a new direction and learn a new skill. But for some of us, it's going to require changing our identities, making space for this new tool because it is taking on a skill that we've spent our entire lives building. And so when it takes away that skill, what does it say about us? Who are we in this world? And we need to figure out who we are going to be. Rule number 12, and I cannot stress this enough, do not tie your self-worth simply to the things that you do. If all of your self-worth is attached to a skill or to a title, it makes it incredibly difficult to retain a level of self-worth when those things need to change. And what you will find is that they do need to change. Instead of having only this one anchor point for your self-worth, remember that you are so much more than that title or skill, that your self-worth is tied to your ability to reinvent yourself, to the people that you love, to the value that you bring to the world outside of the work that you do. Your self-worth is also tied to the experiences that you've had and the way that you think about the world and your ability to learn new things and to figure out the world around you. Do not make the mistake of attaching your self-worth to one thing alone. Rule number 13, recognize that reinvention happens in stages, and it happens in stages for those around you too. So you might be going through certain reinventions much quicker than others, and what you need to do then is to hold the space for them to also go through that reinvention. And this is especially true if you are a leader of a team. Different people in your team will be in different stages of reinvention. You can't rush them through it. You need to hold the space for them to do it on their own. And finally, rule number 14 is develop a reinvention operating system. And the easiest way to think about this is just to continuously be experimenting with your own life. Find 2 or 3 things per quarter that you are trying to change, that you're trying to see what happens when I engage in these new ways of thinking or new ways of doing. For example, one of the experiments on my list is to be running this YouTube channel right now. And through this process, I'm busy reinventing the channel, reinventing my brand, and also learning some new skills. I'd go as far as to say that if you aren't running any experiments in your life or in your business, then you aren't growing. So those were my 14 rapid fire rules for reinvention. If you want to learn more, then check out this video right here.